What would drive a mother to murder her own son's family? In Udaipur, Lalita Sharma, a retired nurse, seemed like the perfect matriarch, until the day her love turned deadly. She poisoned her daughter-in-law and granddaughter, then set their home on fire to cover it up. What was the real motive behind this chilling crime? Stay with us to uncover the shocking truth that no one saw coming. Welcome to True Crime Anatomy. Thank you to my amazing subscribers for your continued support. May your family stay safe wherever they are. For those just joining, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this video. We bring you true crime stories from all around the world, uncovering the unheard and unseen cases, working every day to bring these chilling stories to you. Now let's get into today's case. This is the story of a crime that shocked everyone in Udaipur, India, and left an entire community questioning how a loving mother could commit such an unthinkable act. Lalita Sharma, a 55-year-old retired nurse, had always been a well-respected member of her family. For years, she had been known for her generosity, for being a matriarch who cared deeply for her son, Vikram Patel, and his family. But behind closed doors, something dark was growing inside her. Lalita's relationship with her daughter-in-law, Priya Mehra, was complicated from the start. While everyone thought their family was perfect, there was an underlying tension that would ultimately erupt into tragedy. It started with small comments, questioning Priya's choices, criticizing her in subtle ways, and it only escalated from there. When Priya gave birth to her daughter, Maya, Lalita's resentment reached its peak. It was no longer about the family dynamics. It became something much more dangerous. Lalita's bitterness grew into an obsession. She became convinced that Priya was deceiving her son, even questioning the legitimacy of their child. The suspicions led to something more terrifying than anyone could have imagined. In the blink of an eye, this family's world was shattered in a way that no one could have foreseen. In this video, we'll uncover the twisted path that led to the brutal crime and explore the shocking details of how one woman's obsession turned into a tragedy that no one expected. Stay with us as we examine the chilling truth behind a mother's betrayal and the devastating consequences it had for her own family. Lalita Sharma was a 55-year-old retired nurse from Udaipur, a city known for its stunning lakes and historic palaces. She had spent her career helping people in the medical field, earning respect from those who knew her. As a mother, Lalita had always been deeply involved in her son Vikram Patel's life. Vikram, who was 31 at the time of the tragedy, had always been the center of Lalita's world. She was proud of him, and there seemed to be no limits to the affection she had for him. He was her only child, and from the day he was born, Lalita took it upon herself to guide him through life, making decisions for him and shaping his future. Vikram had grown up in a family that valued tradition and respect, and he had always been taught to honor his mother above all. This connection between mother and son was strong, almost inseparable. But when it came time for Vikram to marry, Lalita's control began to meet resistance. Priya Mehra, a 26-year-old woman from a different background, entered the picture when Vikram chose her to be his wife. Priya was everything that Lalita didn't initially approve of. She came from a well-educated, middle-class family, but lacked the traditional qualities Lalita expected in a daughter-in-law. Priya had a quiet confidence about her, but she wasn't easily impressed by the old traditions that Lalita held dear. This, from the start, created a rift between them. Despite Vikram's love for Priya, Lalita made it clear that she didn't approve of her. In small ways, she undermined Priya, criticizing her cooking, her behavior, and even her devotion to Vikram. Priya tried to ignore these comments, hoping that with time, she would earn Lalita's respect. However, the tension never truly eased. The relationship between Lalita and Priya became a silent battle. Vikram, caught in the middle, didn't know how to fix things. His loyalty to his mother and his love for his wife were pulling him in opposite directions. Still, he chose Priya. In the meantime, Lalita's best friend, a retired nurse named Angela, had been a constant figure in her life. Angela had a daughter who had always been Lalita's idea of the perfect daughter-in-law. Angela's daughter, unlike Priya, was traditional, poised, and had been groomed by her mother to fit into a role that Lalita admired. But Angela's daughter had her own issues. She was known to party late into the night and wasn't the calm, demure figure Lolita imagined her to be. Despite these flaws, Lolita couldn't let go of the belief that she could fix Angela's daughter and mold her into the ideal partner for Vikram. When Vikram rejected Angela's daughter in favor of Priya, Lolita's resentment toward Priya grew. She saw Priya not as a loving wife for her son, but as a woman who had taken away her dream for Vikram's future. Lolita's mind began to fixate on the idea that Priya was not the right woman for him. Lolita's bitterness intensified when Priya gave birth to their daughter Maya. For Lolita, this child symbolized her failure, the end of her control over Vikram's life. It was then that she began to question whether the child was even Vikram's. The thought lingered in her mind, festering like a wound. She started to whisper her suspicions, planting seeds of doubt. "She doesn't even look like Vikram," Lolita would tell him. "Maybe this child is from someone else." These insinuations slowly built up, creating cracks in the family's foundation. Vikram, frustrated by his mother's constant doubts, defended Priya fiercely. But Lolita refused to back down. Her obsession grew, and she became more convinced that Priya had betrayed her son. In her mind, this wasn't just about Priya, it was about her son being deceived. Lolita became fixated on the idea of saving Vikram from what she believed was a mistake. She couldn't let go of the notion that only she could see the truth. Despite all of this, Lolita still maintained her position as the loving, doting mother. She would often visit the family home, pretending to be caring and involved. She played the role of a grandmother with Maya, occasionally bringing gifts or offering to help. To everyone else, she seemed like the perfect mother-in-law, someone who was supportive and loving despite their differences. However, Priya couldn't shake the feeling that something was off whenever Lolita visited. The tension between them was palpable, but Priya, always trying to keep the peace, never confronted her mother-in-law directly. She knew that any confrontation would only make things worse. The more Vikram stood by his wife, the more isolated Lolita became. She could feel her influence slipping away, and this only made her anger grow. Her mind, already clouded with doubt, twisted these feelings into something darker. What happened next was not an impulsive act. It was carefully planned. Lolita had long since made up her mind that she had to take control of the situation. She wasn't going to lose her son to Priya, and she was willing to do whatever it took to break the bond between them. As time passed, Lolita began to plan her ultimate act of control. She knew the family's routines, she knew when Vikram would be at work, and she knew that Priya was often home alone with Maya. Lolita had carefully calculated the moment when she would make her move, believing that after everything was said and done, Vikram would return to her. She had carefully studied her family's routines, knowing the exact moment when her son Vikram would be at work and Priya would be home alone with Maya, their newborn daughter. On that particular day, Lolita arrived at her son's home under the guise of visiting to spend time with her granddaughter. To anyone who saw her, it seemed like a typical grandmother's visit. Priya, trusting her mother-in-law's intentions, welcomed her in. Lolita was calm, composed, even warm. It was hard for anyone to imagine that she was carrying out a plan to destroy everything. Lolita had brought food with her that day, something she had prepared herself. She told Priya that it was a special treat. As she handed over the meal, she casually mentioned that she had added her own little twist to it, saying it was something Vikram would love. Priya, tired from taking care of a newborn, didn't think twice about it. She trusted her mother-in-law, perhaps too much. But inside that meal was something dangerous. Lolita had secretly laced the food with sleeping pills, enough to make Priya drowsy, perhaps fall into a deep sleep. At first, Priya felt nothing out of the ordinary. She ate the food, and within an hour, she began to feel extremely tired, as though her body was giving in to an overwhelming sense of exhaustion. Her eyelids grew heavy, and before she knew it, she was drifting into a deep slumber. Lolita, however, wasn't finished. She had carefully planned every detail. Knowing that Vikram wouldn't return home for several hours, she took her time to set the stage. With Priya now unconscious, Lolita moved Maya from her crib, carefully lifting the tiny girl. Her mind was set on creating a scene that would be seen as an accident, something that would leave no doubt in Vikram's mind about what had happened. Lolita carried Maya into the bathroom, placing her in a position that would suggest a tragic fall. She hit the child's head lightly against the side of the tub, just enough to make it appear as if Maya had slipped while her mother was holding her. It was clear that Lolita wanted to make it look like Priya had accidentally lost her balance while holding the child, and they had both fallen into the tub. But that was not enough. Lolita's real motive was much darker. She needed to make sure there would be no traces of what she had done. She turned on the tap, filling the bathtub with water, and when the water was high enough, she gently placed Maya's body in the tub, just enough to make it look as though the baby had drowned in the accident. With both Priya and Maya unconscious, Lolita proceeded with her final act, setting the house on fire. She had carefully prepared a fire starter, knowing exactly where the house was most vulnerable. She set the fire in the kitchen, a place where it could easily spread to the rest of the house, consuming everything in its path. The flames would destroy the evidence, and the fire would explain away the tragic events that had just unfolded. The smoke quickly filled the house, and the fire spread faster than anyone could have anticipated. It was clear Lolita had thought of everything. She had planned it all meticulously, making sure no one would suspect her, not even Vikram. The house was engulfed in flames, the heat intense enough to burn almost everything inside. The fire had left a trail of destruction, but it was the aftermath that would prove to be just as catastrophic. When authorities first responded to the call about the fire, they assumed it was a tragic accident. The house was fully engulfed by flames, and the scene was chaotic. Firefighters quickly got the blaze under control, but the damage was already done. Priya Mehra and her baby, Maya, were both found lifeless, their bodies discovered in the wreckage. At first, investigators believed it was a tragic accident, a house fire caused by a faulty appliance or some other mishap. There didn't seem to be any immediate signs of foul play. The first responders noted that the fire had spread rapidly, but they didn't find anything unusual at the scene. It appeared that the fire had started in the kitchen, which seemed to match the story of a simple accident. But something didn't sit right with the authorities. As the investigation unfolded, there were a few early signs that suggested it might not have been an accident after all. Detective Rajesh Singh was the lead investigator on the case. He had years of experience, but this case would challenge everything he thought he knew about family tragedies. Detective Singh, along with his team, began piecing together the events that led up to the fire. They first turned their attention to the autopsies of Priya and Maya. The medical examiner found something odd in Priya's system, traces of sleeping pills. It didn't take long for the investigators to realize that the fire and the deaths of Priya and Maya might not have been the result of a simple accident. There was something more to it. The sleeping pills in Priya's system pointed to the possibility that she had been drugged before the fire started. But the real turning point came when forensic experts uncovered evidence of foul play. The way the fire had started, quickly and in a specific area of the house, seemed too deliberate. The kitchen, where the fire had begun, wasn't just an accident waiting to happen. It was the place where Lolita had set the blaze intentionally, and the investigators soon learned that this wasn't the first suspicious thing about the situation. Detective Singh and his team looked into the background of the family and their relationships. They interviewed neighbors and friends, trying to get a clearer picture of what had been happening in the days leading up to the fire. That's when they discovered some strange behavior from Lolita. She had been visiting her son's house frequently in the weeks before the fire, sometimes bringing food and other gifts. She was acting strangely, but no one had thought much of it at the time. She had always been close to her son, so no one questioned her motives. As the investigation deepened, one of the neighbors mentioned overhearing a conversation between Lolita and her friend, Angela. It was a conversation that stood out to them because of its unusual tone. According to the neighbor, Lolita had been speaking in a way that seemed almost too calm for someone who had just lost her daughter-in-law and granddaughter in a tragic fire. The neighbor felt something was off and came forward to share what they had heard. With this new information, the investigators began to focus their attention on Lolita. They started questioning her more closely, but she maintained her innocence. At first, She was calm and composed, insisting that the fire was a tragic accident. But as the investigators pressed her for details, they noticed cracks in her story. Lolita claimed that she had no idea how the fire had started, but when asked about the sleeping pills found in Priya's system, her answers were less convincing. She stumbled over her words, unable to explain how they had ended up in Priya's body. It was becoming clear that Lolita's version of events wasn't adding up. Detective Singh knew that they needed more concrete evidence to charge Lolita, but there were still many unanswered questions. They turned to forensic experts to analyze the evidence more thoroughly. Forensic experts confirmed that the pills found in Priya's system were a type of sleeping medication, likely used to sedate her before the fire was set. But the big breakthrough came when they discovered something even more disturbing: traces of accelerants in the kitchen. This indicated that the fire had been intentionally started, likely with gasoline or another flammable substance. Despite the mounting evidence, the investigators faced challenges in building a strong case. Lolita's calm demeanor and well-rehearsed answers had made her a difficult suspect to pin down. She had an answer for everything, and she was careful not to slip up. But the evidence was beginning to speak for itself. It was clear that the fire was not an accident. It was a carefully planned act of murder. The investigation took a dramatic turn when Angela, Lolita's best friend, finally came forward with a shocking revelation. She admitted that Lolita had confessed to the crime. Angela said that Lolita had told her that she had drugged Priya and set the house on fire to make it look like an accident. Angela had been shocked when she heard this, but she didn't speak up right away. It wasn't until she confided in another friend that the truth began to emerge. That friend, concerned for the safety of her own family, encouraged Angela to tell the authorities what she knew. With this new testimony, the case against Lolita grew stronger. Investigators were able to piece together the final moments before the fire. They knew that Lolita had drugged Priya, drowned the baby, and then set the house on fire. The motive, they believed, was rooted in jealousy and control. Lolita had felt threatened by Priya's presence in her son's life and believed that she could not accept a daughter-in-law who was not under her control. Despite the mounting evidence and the testimony from Angela, Lolita still denied her involvement in the murders. She tried to maintain her innocence, but the investigators knew they had enough to charge her. The case had taken a long, painful journey, but it was clear that Lolita Sharma was responsible for the deaths of her son's family. As the trial approached, the community was left in shock. Many couldn't believe that a mother could commit such a crime against her own son and his family. The trial would reveal more about Lolita's twisted motives and the extent to which she was willing to go to control her son's life. As the investigation continued, several motives began to surface. Lolita Sharma had always been controlling and domineering, especially when it came to her son Vikram. The bond between mother and son was intense, but Vikram's choice to marry Priya Mehra seemed to ignite a spark of resentment in Lolita. Priya, a woman of her own mind and not easily controlled, was everything Lolita couldn't accept. From the start, Lolita seemed to view Priya as an outsider, someone who had taken Vikram away from her and refused to live up to her expectations. But what was the true motive for murder? One of the most glaring theories was that Lolita's obsession with control had reached dangerous extremes. Priya's presence in Vikram's life threatened Lolita's authority and influence. She had spent years shaping Vikram's world, and Priya's entry disrupted that control. As a retired nurse, Lolita was accustomed to making decisions for others. She had cared for people, but in her mind, Priya didn't fit into the role she envisioned for her son's family. Her desire to fix everything, especially the situation with Vikram's wife, seemed to turn into an unhealthy fixation. Another potential motive was jealousy. The birth of Maya, Vikram and Priya's daughter, may have been the tipping point for Lolita. A child often symbolizes a new generation, and for Lolita, this could have represented a further loss of control. She may have seen her grandchild as a symbol of defeat, an addition to a family that didn't fully belong to her. Lolita's suspicions about Maya's paternity seemed to amplify this feeling. The idea that the child wasn't truly Vikram's was something she clung to, fueling her anger and paranoia. Some speculated that Vikram's defensiveness of his mother and his failure to address her manipulative behavior might have played a role in his family's tragic end. Vikram's blind loyalty to his mother could have allowed the tension between Priya and Lalita to escalate unnoticed, and in some way, this may have given Lalita the confidence to carry out her plan. Now, as you reflect on the details of this case, I want to ask you, what do you think truly drove Lalita to commit this crime? Do you believe her desire for control and fear of being replaced were enough to push her to murder? Or do you think there's something more to her story? Something we haven't uncovered yet? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Who do you believe is truly responsible for this crime? Was it Lalita alone, or did others play a role? Let's hear your theories. And as always, thank you for joining us in uncovering the dark truths behind real-life crime. The case of Lalita Sharma, the mother who murdered her son's family, is one that leaves a lasting mark on anyone who follows it. It's difficult to comprehend how someone who was supposed to be a figure of trust and support could betray her own family in such a cold, calculated way. Vikram Patel lost not only his wife and daughter, but also his mother, the very person who was supposed to care for him. His world was turned upside down, and while the court handed down a life sentence, no punishment could ever truly repair the damage caused. For Lalita, life in prison might seem like a just consequence, but does it undo the harm she caused? Does any punishment truly make up for the loss of two innocent lives? What do you think about the outcome? Was justice served in this case, or is there a deeper sense of injustice we're missing? Is it possible for someone to truly recover from the betrayal of a family member so deeply? Let's hear your thoughts in the comments below. This case is a stark reminder that sometimes the most dangerous people are those we trust the most. It challenges us to think about family dynamics, control, and the dark places the human mind can go when it feels threatened. There's no easy answer, but perhaps, in reflecting on this tragedy, we come closer to understanding the lengths to which some will go to regain the control they feel they've lost. What's clear is that no one leaves this case untouched. For Vikram, Priya's family, and even Lalita herself, the consequences of her actions will echo through their lives for years to come. As you reflect on this story, remember that justice isn't just about punishment. It's about understanding the full weight of the impact on all those involved. If you found this case as gripping and thought-provoking as we did, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life true crime stories. And don't forget, next time we'll uncover another mind-bending case. You won't want to miss it. So, subscribe and hit the notification bell so you never miss out on another case. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the darkest secrets are hidden in plain sight.